Turn around, lady. This is a private estate. No late-night visits.
I need to see Jisun. It's urgent.
The boss doesn't do walk-ins. Get lost before I make you.
Please, call him. Tell him it's Zendaya.
If the world ever turns on you, find me.
He wants you in the penthouse. Follow me. This way. This is as far as I go. From now on, you're on your own.
I saved your life in that alley. Do you remember me?
I know who you are. Or who you claim to be. In my world, people wear faces that aren't theirs. Prove it.
You had a jagged laceration just under your left rib.
I've never forgotten you.
You refused the innocent.
I need your help.
Of course. I owe you my life.
I killed someone tonight.
Who did you kill?
Who tried to kill me.
I'm here now. You're safe with me.
Jisun had spent years becoming the man everyone feared. But the moment he saw the terror in Zendaya's eyes, something inside him changed. The Ruthless Mafia King wasn't looking at her like a victim. He was looking at her like the woman he had sworn to protect. Everyone in the city knew Jisun as a ruthless man who showed mercy to no one. But Zendaya was beginning to discover the secret nobody else had ever seen. Behind the cold Mafia King was a man who still remembered the woman who once saved his life. But Zendaya hadn't come to Jisun simply because she missed him. She had come because someone was dead, and she was terrified of what would happen when he discovered who the victim was. She finally told him the truth. She had killed a man, but she never imagined that one name could change everything. Victor. Because Victor wasn't just another criminal. He was the brother of Ivan, the most dangerous enforcer of the rival syndicate. In a single second, the gentleman Zendaya had just discovered disappeared. The Mafia King had returned, and Jisun knew exactly what Victor's death meant. Black SUVs were already moving through the city. His enemies were preparing to strike. But Jisun wasn't thinking about the war. He was thinking about her. The woman who had saved his life years ago was now the woman his enemies wanted dead. And he would make sure they regretted coming for her. Neither of them knew it yet, but the moment Zendaya walked through those gates, she had unknowingly stepped into a war. And now the most feared Mafia King in the city had a choice: protect his empire or protect the woman who had never forgotten the man he used to be. And Jisun had already made his choice. They wanted Zendaya. They would have to come through the Mafia King first.
The silence in the penthouse was heavy enough to crush bone. I stood frozen against the cold glass, waiting for the reality of what I'd done to turn Jisun into the monster everyone claimed he was. Victor was an apex predator in the criminal underworld, and his brother Ivan was the devil himself. By killing Victor, I hadn't just crossed a line. I had ignited a war. I braced myself, fully expecting Jisun to hand me over to save his own empire. I couldn't stop the words from spilling out, the adrenaline crashing as I confessed every gruesome detail of the clinic. The shattered medicine cabinets, the blinding terror, the metallic scent of blood, and the sickening finality of the scalpel. I was shaking so.
Word of Victor's death spread through the city's underworld like a blood-borne pathogen. I didn't have to see Ivan to know the exact moment he found his brother's lifeless body. I could feel the violent shift in the air, a suffocating pressure that descended over the entire district before the sun even rose.
Ivan was not a man who mourned, he butchered. By dawn, the Whisper networks were screaming, and a citywide manhunt had been triggered. The bounty placed on my head was so astronomically high, it turned every street corner, every alleyway, and every shadow into a potential execution block. Jisun's fortress was virtually impenetrable, but the crushing reality of being a hunted woman began to claw at my sanity. Against Jisun's better judgment, and desperate to reclaim a fractured sliver of my normal life, I convinced a heavily armed detail of his men to escort me to a discreet, neutral territory pharmacy for a specialized prescription his on-call doctors couldn't source immediately. It was supposed to be a ghost run, in and out before the city even knew we were breathing. But Ivan's reach was... The adrenaline of the pharmacy ambush hadn't completely faded by the time the armored SUV tore through the heavy iron gates of the estate. My hands were still trembling, the metallic taste of fear clinging to the back of my throat. As the guards rushed me through the grand marble foyer, the sprawling compound felt less like a sanctuary and more like an active war room. It was there, amidst the chaos of barked orders and shifting security details, that I finally encountered the Viper coiled tightly within Jisun's inner circle. Elena didn't just walk into a room. She commanded the very oxygen inside it. As Jisun's top lieutenant, she was a breathtakingly lethal force wrapped in dark, tailored silk and icy authority. Every movement she made was predatory and precise. While the rest of the penthouse had become a gilded prison. Despite the breathtaking views and the extravagant luxury, the walls were closing in on me. Everywhere I turned, there was a silent guard, a heavy electronic lock, or a security camera tracking my every breath. Jisun's protection was absolute, but the suffocating isolation was driving me entirely mad. My mind constantly drifted to Leo, my younger brother. He was stashed in a safe house across the city, completely ignorant of the brutal syndicate war raging because of my bloody hands. The agonizing need to see him, to assure myself he was still breathing, finally outweighed my terror of Ivan's assassins. Slipping past Jisun's elite detail required every ounce of nerve I possessed. I spent days memorizing their patrol routes, timing the blind spots in the surveillance grid, and finally slipped out through the service elevator, disguised in an oversized jacket and a pulled-down cap. For a fleeting moment, as the cold night air hit my face, I tasted freedom. But in this city, freedom was a fatal illusion for a woman with a bounty on her head. I didn't even make it 3 blocks before I felt the lethal shift in the shadows. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as the distinct rhythm of heavy footsteps synced with mine. I ducked into a narrow, winding alley, my pulse hammering against my ribs. But the figures emerged from the gloom. Ivan's men, their eyes cold and hungry. Panic surged as I bolted, sprinting through the labyrinth of rain-slicked streets. The chase was a blur of burning lungs and desperate turns. Bullets sparked against the brick walls beside me, a deafening reminder of my catastrophic miscalculation. I scrambled into a dead end, cornered like a frightened animal, bracing for the inevitable end. Suddenly, the deafening roar of a high-performance engine shattered the night. A sleek, armored sedan tore into the alley, blinding my pursuers with its high beams. Before the car even slammed to a halt, the doors flew open. Jisun stepped out, a terrifying vision of unbridled fury. He didn't just shoot Ivan's men, he eradicated them with cold, calculated precision, moving with the terrifying lethality of a man born to rule the darkness. When the silence returned, thick and ringing with spent gunpowder, he turned to me. His eyes were entirely black, radiating a devastating anger that made shrink back against the damp brick. He crossed the distance in 2 massive strides, his hands gripping my shoulders tight enough to bruise. His voice was a dangerous, jagged whisper that tore through the rain, reprimanding me for my reckless stupidity. I had never seen him so terrifyingly enraged, yet beneath the fury, I saw the raw, agonizing panic of a man who had almost lost the one thing he swore to protect. The aftermath of the alleyway rescue shifted something fundamental within the estate. Jisun's fury dissolved into a suffocating, hyper-vigilant possessiveness, his every command now centered entirely around my survival. But while his affection shielded me, it was actively fracturing his empire from the inside out. I didn't see the true extent of the rot until it was far too late. Elena watched his transformation with a simmering, catastrophic rage. To a woman forged in the absolute brutality of the syndicate, love was not a strength. It was a terminal disease. She saw her king, the most ruthless predator in the city, hesitating. She watched him redirect elite strike teams to guard my closed doors and bleed their tactical resources dry just to ensure I could sleep without trembling. In her eyes, I wasn't just a liability anymore. I was the poison dismantling the dynasty she had bled to build beside him. And Elena was not the kind of woman to let her empire burn for the sake of a clinic nurse. I would only learn the devastating truth of her betrayal after the ashes had settled. While Jisun was distracted, consumed by the mechanics of keeping me breathing, Elena slipped into the shadows of the estate's encrypted communications room. She didn't orchestrate a coup. She was far too calculating for something so loud. Instead, she struck a quiet, venomous backdoor. I didn't hear the gunshots that ended my brother's life. I was safely locked away in Jisun's impenetrable glass tower, sheltered by the very walls that were supposed to keep my family breathing. The first sign that my world had been permanently severed came when Jisun's private secure line blared in the dead of night. I watched the color drain from his face as he listened to the voice on the other end. He didn't have to say a single word. The hollow, devastating silence in his dark eyes told me everything. We tore across the city in a convoy of heavily armored vehicles, the neon lights bleeding into a smeared, chaotic blur through the rain-slicked windows. But no matter how fast we drove, we were already a lifetime too late. The safehouse was a slaughterhouse. The paralyzing numbness of grief didn't fade. It merely crystallized into something infinitely sharper. I didn't shed another tear after we buried Leo. The mourning was over, and in its place, a cold, methodical obsession took root. I walked into Jisun's private, subterranean armory the very next dawn. He was standing by a steel workbench, stripping a weapon in the dim, metallic light, watching me with eyes that understood exactly what had shattered inside me. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't ask for a better bodyguard. I looked the most dangerous man in the city dead in the eyes and demanded he teach me how to kill. Not his elite guards, not his lieutenants. Him. He didn't offer empty platitudes or try to talk me down. He simply picked up a heavy, matte black firearm and pressed it into my palms, the cold steel grounding the chaotic, burning rage in my blood. What followed were weeks of absolute, agonizing brutality. Jisun systematically dismantled the merciful clinic nurse with his own hands, stripping away my hesitation and replacing it with lethal precision. The underground training mat became our isolated sanctuary. My days were measured in split lips, deeply bruised ribs, and the deafening percussive crack of gunfire echoing against reinforced concrete. He taught me how to exploit the anatomical vulnerabilities I used to meticulously stitch together, how to disarm a man twice my size, and how to pull a trigger without a single spike in my heart rate. Through the grueling physical exhaustion and the sweat, our bond forged into something fierce and entirely unbreakable. We moved together in a synchronized, violent rhythm. Whenever my strength faltered, whenever the ghosts of my old, passive life tried to pull me back into the light, Jisun was there. He would crowd me against the mats, his chest heaving against mine, his dark eyes burning with an intoxicating, consuming devotion. He would grip my jaw, his thumb brushing over my new bruises, and whisper that a queen does not beg for survival. She takes the lives of those who dare threaten her empire. In those breathless, intimate moments, The line between mentor, protector, and lover completely disintegrated. I stopped flinching at the sound of gunfire. I stopped looking away from the dark. As I stood in front of the armory mirror weeks later, tracing the unyielding lines of my posture and the fresh calluses on my trigger finger, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She wasn't a fragile civilian waiting to be rescued from a gilded cage. She was a weapon, honed to devastating perfection by the Mafia King himself. And she was finally ready.
The air in the armored transport vans was thick with the metallic scent of weapon oil and impending violence. Jisun was launching a full-scale siege on Ivan's primary shipping warehouse, the bleeding heart of his rival syndicate's empire. I was stationed in the mobile command center just outside the perimeter, watching the raid through the encrypted tactical feeds, my new sidearm resting cold and heavy against my hip. When Jisun's elite strike force breached the compound, the initial feed was a chaotic symphony of shattering concrete and suppressing fire. It was designed to be a flawless, overwhelming blitz, meant to crush Ivan before he could even draw a breath. But a war cannot be won when the rot is already inside your own house. I watched the thermal monitors in absolute horror as the assault abruptly flatlined. The trap wasn't triggered by Ivan's men. It was sprung by our own. As Jisun pushed deep into the central warehouse, clearing the main floor with terrifying efficiency, the encrypted radios violently screeched with dead air. Then, the heavy steel blast doors on all sides slammed shut, sealing Jisun and his vanguard completely inside the kill zone. The camera feeds flickered, capturing the agonizing confusion as the secondary security teams, Elena's hand-picked loyalists, suddenly turned their weapons on Jisun's most trusted guards. It was an internal massacre, orchestrated with suffocating precision. Through the static-laced audio, I heard the chilling, distinct click of a hammer pulling back, echoing loudly through the cavernous warehouse. The primary camera feed stabilized just enough to broadcast the ultimate betrayal. The feed went black, but I was already moving. I didn't call for backup. In that moment, there was no one left to trust. Slipping out of the mobile command center into the driving rain, I became the very shadow Jisun had relentlessly trained me to be. I breached the warehouse through a rusted industrial ventilation shaft, dropping silently onto the darkened catwalks directly above the kill zone. The tactical precision Jisun had hammered into my bones violently took over. Two of Ivan's guards patrolling the upper perimeter didn't even have time to exhale before I took them down, moving with a cold, lethal fluidity in complete silence. I swept like a ghost through the upper gantry until I had a flawless vantage point of the execution floor below. Jisun was still on his knees amidst the debris, blood dripping from his jaw, staring defiantly up at Ivan's sadistic grin, while Elena kept her weapon pressed firmly against his skull. Every empire is built on blood and secrets, but this chapter has finally come to a close. If you were captivated by this descent into the underworld, leave a like on this video to secure your loyalty to the Syndicate. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale of power, betrayal, and vengeance. Our network is expanding, and I want to know how far our reach extends. Drop a comment down below and tell me exactly what city or country you are watching from tonight. Until the next story unfolds, stay safe and stay dangerous.